Dusk settled over the Wyoming plains, painting the sky in bruised purple and fading gold. On a quiet porch, a tall widow stood with trembling hands, her voice breaking a silence she'd carried for years. "I've never been kissed," she confessed. And below her, a weathered rancher removed his hat, slowly, reverently, as though standing in church, and whispered, "Then let's start slow." What followed was not scandal nor gossip, but the kind of love story that echoed across the valley for generations. A tale of two people who had been told they were too much, and somehow not enough, until they found each other. If stories of second chances and unexpected love stir something in your heart, you're in the right place. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe for more heartfelt tales, and share it with someone who could use a reminder that it's never too late to hope. Every click helps us keep these stories alive, and you never know, the next one might just change your day. The Wyoming sky had a way of swallowing a person whole, wide, endless, and brutally honest. For Ingred Sorenson, it was both a comfort and a punishment. She was 6'2", a towering woman who had long ago stopped apologizing for her height. But she still carried something heavier than her frame: loneliness. When her husband Lars died 2 winters back, the neighbors called him kind. That word clung to the funeral like frost on glass. Yes, he had been kind, but kindness hadn't warmed the space between them. It hadn't filled the silence at breakfast, nor softened the nights of lying side by side like strangers. And so, when pneumonia took him, Ingrid felt something sharper than grief. Relief. Relief that she could stop pretending marriage was enough. But relief is a thin blanket against the cold of loneliness. Days became chores. She fed the chickens, hauled water, split wood until her arms ached. Nights were worse. Every sunset felt like a small death, every sunrise a sentence to keep enduring. Neighbors helped sometimes. A basket of bread, a mended fence post, a quick visit that never lingered. Folks didn't quite know what to do with her. Too tall, too strong, too much woman and not enough softness. Except for Jacob Henrikson. He lived across the valley, a quiet man who rarely spoke. When their eyes met across the ridge, he'd only tip his hat before riding on. He was not a talker, not a charmer, not a man of grand gestures. And yet things began to appear. A neat stack of firewood by her shed, a broken hinge fixed overnight, fresh venison hanging in her smokehouse. Ingrid knew it was him. No one else came around. Then one evening she caught him in the act, replacing a rotted fence post on her north line. Startled, he'd wiped his hands on his trousers like a boy caught stealing apples. "Thought you could use the help," he said. "I didn't ask for it," she replied. "I know." That was all. He mounted his horse and rode away, but something shifted. An invisible line had been crossed. Weeks later, he showed up at her door. Not sneaking, not hiding. This time he knocked. They sat on her porch steps as the sun melted into the horizon, speaking cautiously at first. Weather, ranch work, rumors of a railroad cutting through the territory, safe topics. But silence stretched between them, heavy and expectant, and that's when the words tumbled out of her chest, desperate and reckless. "I don't know how to do this," she said. "Do what?" Jacob asked. "Talk to someone, be near someone. I was married for 2 years and never learned how. Lars, he was kind, but he didn't love me. Not really. He needed a ranch hand more than a wife, that's all it ever was." Jacob didn't interrupt. He just let the silence hold her confession. She swallowed hard. "I've never been kissed. Not the way people talk about. Not the way that matters." The words hung in the air, trembling like a bird too afraid to fly. Jacob slowly removed his hat, holding it with both hands as if standing before an altar. His voice was steady, gentle. "Then let's start slow." The sky deepened into violet. A night bird called by the creek. Ingrid's heart thundered in her chest, not with shame this time, but with something she hadn't felt in years. Possibility. "I don't know what that means," she whispered. "It means I'll come by tomorrow," he said. "Help with whatever needs doing, we'll talk. We'll get to know each other. No expectations, no pressure, just being around." Why would you want that? She asked, almost angry at the hope rising inside her. Jacob turned toward the valley. Because I'm tired of being alone. Because I see you working yourself raw to keep this place alive. And I think maybe we could both carry the load a little easier together. Then his eyes met hers, steady and unflinching. And because when I look at you, I don't see someone who's too much. I see someone who's exactly right. Something cracked open inside her. A dam breaking after years of silence. She wanted to argue, to protect herself with skepticism. But instead she whispered the truth. I don't know how to trust this. Then don't, he said softly. Not yet. Just let me show up tomorrow. That's all. For the first time in years, she didn't feel invisible. She didn't feel like a burden. She felt seen. And as Jacob mounted his horse, slipping his hat back on, he looked at her once more. What you told me tonight, that took courage. More than most people ever find. Don't think for a second I don't know that. He rode off into the deepening night, leaving her trembling on the porch, tears running freely. But they weren't tears of loneliness anymore. They were tears of hope. And hope, she realized, was the most dangerous and the most beautiful thing of all. The next morning, Ingrid woke before dawn. She told herself it was to check on the livestock, but deep down she knew she was waiting. Every creak of the wind made her chest tighten. Would he come? Would he really keep his word? Then, faint but certain, she heard it, the steady beat of hooves. Jacob rode into the yard carrying 2 tin cups of coffee, steam curling in the cold morning air. He handed one to her without ceremony, and she held it like a treasure. Real coffee, rich and warm, not the bitter substitute she'd stretched for months. They worked side by side that day, patching her barn roof, turning the garden soil. Words were few, but the silence was different now. Not emptiness, companionship. At noon, over bread and jam, he asked her quietly, "Tell me something you've never told anyone." She hesitated, then admitted, "I'm afraid I've forgotten how to live. I've spent so long just surviving. I don't remember how to be a person anymore." Jacob's gaze softened. "I know that feeling," he said. He told her of his wife who had died in childbirth and the years since spent buried in work and silence. His voice caught, but he didn't look away. "Maybe," he added, "we're not meant to just survive. Maybe we're meant for more, like this, sitting in the sun with someone who understands, waking up tomorrow with a reason." Ingrid felt her chest ache. For the first time, she didn't feel foolish for longing. She felt understood. Days turned to weeks. They worked together, argued gently over chores, even laughed once. An unexpected sound that startled her as much as it delighted him. One evening, as rain hammered the roof, Jacob arrived soaked through. She opened the door, shocked. "You came through this storm?" she asked. He nodded. "Because I didn't want you thinking I'd changed my mind. I said I'd come, and I meant it." Something broke inside her then, not in pain but in release. He was steady, dependable, true. A man who showed up, even when it was hard. In the glow of the fire that night, she whispered what she had never said aloud. "My marriage was lonely. So lonely, I thought I'd lose my mind. I wanted to matter to someone, just once." Jacob leaned forward, steady and sure. "You matter to me." The words struck her like a hammer against stone, cracking open years of silence. Later, when she asked timidly if she could touch his hand, he held it out without hesitation. Rough, calloused, warm. No demands, no expectations. Just presence. It was in those small, ordinary moments, the turned soil, the shared stew, the quiet laughter, that love began to grow. Not sudden, not sweeping, but steady, rooted. Then one spring morning she found a bundle of wildflowers tied with twine on her porch. No note, none needed. That evening when Jacob rode up, she called to him before he could dismount. Her voice shook, but her heart was steady. I've been thinking about what you said, about love being something you build day by day. I think I've been building it with you and Jacob. I think I've been falling in love with you. The rancher stilled, golden light catching in his eyes. Say that again, he whispered. I love you. In 3 strides he was before her, cupping her face with hands as gentle as they were strong. I've loved you since the first night on this porch, he said, but love isn't about taking. It's about waiting until the other person is ready to give. Tears streamed down her cheeks. I'm ready now. And when his lips finally met hers, it wasn't fireworks or scandal. It was home. Soft, patient, steady. The kiss she had waited her whole life for. From that night forward, they chose each other every day. They married in her cabin months later, combining their lives and ranches. Folks in town talked, but not with pity, with envy, with hope. Because everyone could see, this wasn't just survival. This was love. Years later, Ingrid stood in her kitchen, teaching their little daughter how to knead bread. Through the window, she saw Jacob in the field with their infant son strapped to his chest. He looked up, caught her watching, and waved. She waved back, her heart swelling. And in that simple exchange, she remembered that night on the porch, the trembling words, the man who took off his hat, and the promise to start slow. Now, slow had turned into forever. And so the story of the giant widow and the quiet rancher became more than just a local tale. It became a legend of hope, whispered across the valley and carried through generations. Not because it was grand or scandalous, but because it was true. 2 people who thought they were too much, or not enough, discovered that together, they were exactly right. If this story touched your heart, remember this. It's never too late. Never too late to be seen, never too late to be loved, never too late to start again. Even if you start slow. Thank you for joining us today. If you found meaning here, please like this video, subscribe for more stories that heal and inspire, and share it with someone who might need reminding that love, hope, and second chances are real. Because sometimes the greatest stories aren't about heroes or kings. They're about ordinary people brave enough to hope again. And that, my friends, is a story worth passing on.